You've been staring at your phone for 7 minutes now. It's ringing. The name on the screen is someone you love, someone you've been meaning to talk to, and yet your thumb hovers over the red button like it's defusing a bomb. Your heart rate climbs. Your chest tightens. You watch it ring once, twice, 3 times, and then silence. The relief that floods through you feels like surviving something, even though nothing actually happened. You tell yourself you'll call back later. You tell yourself you were busy. But the truth sits heavier than that, doesn't it? The truth is that the idea of hearing their voice right now, of having to respond in real time, of not knowing what they'll say or what you'll have to become in order to meet it, that feels like standing naked in front of a mirror you didn't ask to look into. So you text them instead. Sorry, missed your call. What's up? And you breathe again. There's a world that doesn't understand you. A world that calls this avoidance, laziness, rudeness even. They say you're hiding. They say you're scared of real connection. They roll their eyes when you let another call go to voicemail, when you respond hours later with carefully chosen words instead of spontaneous laughter. They think you don't care. They think you're cold. But they don't know what it costs you to speak without preparation. They don't know that your silence isn't empty. It's full of every word you're trying to arrange into something that won't break you open in ways you can't control. You prefer texting not because you're running from intimacy, but because you're protecting something fragile inside yourself that the world has never been gentle enough to hold. Let's talk about what that something is. You learned early that your spontaneous self wasn't safe. Maybe not through any single traumatic moment, though those leave their marks too, but through the 1,000 small corrections that taught you that who you are, unfiltered, is too much or too little or too strange for the world to receive without judgment. You said something honest once and watched the room change temperature. You expressed excitement and were told to calm down. You showed sadness and were told to get over it. You spoke your thoughts and saw confusion or dismissal flicker across someone's face before they'd even finished listening. So you learned to edit yourself. You learned to rehearse. You learned that the space between stimulus and response isn't just a psychological concept, it's survival. Texting gives you that space back. It returns to you the seconds and minutes you need to become the version of yourself that the world can tolerate. You type, delete, retype. You soften your edges. You add a smiley face to make sure they know you're not angry. You remove the intensity that might make them uncomfortable. You craft your sentences like tiny architecture, building bridges between who you are and who you need to seem to be in order to keep people from leaving. And maybe that sounds sad to someone who moves through the world with the ease of never having been punished for their authenticity. But to you, it's not sad. It's careful. It's kind. It's the way you've learned to love people without accidentally bleeding on them. Phone calls don't allow for that kindness. Phone calls demand your raw self, your unprepared self, your self that stumbles over words and can't find the right tone and says things that come out wrong and can't be unsaid. Phone calls are live performances where you can't see the audience, but you can feel them judging every pause, every moment of silence that stretches too long because your mind went blank or your anxiety spiked or you just needed a second to remember who you're supposed to be right now. The phone demands that you be present in a way that feels like exposure. And you've spent your whole life learning that exposure is dangerous. There's another layer here. one that runs even deeper. You prefer texting because somewhere along the way, you internalized the belief that your immediate reactions, your unfiltered thoughts and feelings, are suspect, that they need to be interrogated before they're allowed into the world. That trusting your first impulse is how you get hurt or how you hurt others. This is what perfectionism does to communication. It turns every interaction into a test you're terrified of failing. And texting is the only format that lets you study for the test while you're taking it. You read their message and you feel something immediately. Anger, joy, confusion, love, but you don't trust that feeling enough to respond from it. Instead, you dissect it. You ask yourself what it means. You wonder what they meant. You consider how your response will be received, how it might be misunderstood, whether you're overreacting or underreacting or reading too much into things or not reading enough. You turn over every possible interpretation like stones, looking for danger underneath. And then, after all that internal negotiation, you type something that sounds casual, something that sounds easy, something that makes it seem like you're not carrying the weight of 1,000 calculations just to say sounds good. This is exhausting, yes, but it's also the only way you know how to be safe. The world tells you this is overthinking. The world tells you to just be yourself, as if that's simple. As if yourself isn't a complicated ecosystem of fears and hopes and past wounds that all start screaming the moment someone asks you a direct question on the phone and expects an answer in real time. But here's what the world doesn't tell you. Your preference for texting isn't a flaw in your ability to connect. It's evidence of how deeply you want to connect and how afraid you are of doing it wrong. Because you do want connection. You want it desperately. You want to be known and understood and loved. You want to tell people true things and have them received with care. You want intimacy that doesn't feel like interrogation. You want conversations that don't leave you replaying every word you said for hours afterward, wincing at your own humanity. You just want all of that on terms that don't make you feel like you're going to shatter. Texting lets you love people from behind a pane of glass, close enough to touch, but protected from the impact. And maybe that's not the kind of connection everyone needs, but it's the kind you can survive. It's the kind that doesn't leave you hollowed out and second-guessing yourself for days. It's the kind where you can be generous and thoughtful and present without having to be invulnerable. There's a particular loneliness that comes with this, though. A loneliness that lives in the gap between how you communicate and how the world expects you to communicate. You watch other people pick up the phone effortlessly, laugh into it, talk for hours about nothing, and you feel like you're missing some essential gene that makes human connection feel natural instead of like a tightrope walk over water you're not sure you can swim in. You watch extroverts thrive in spaces that drain you. You watch people who can think out loud, who can stumble through conversations without shame, who can say the wrong thing and laugh it off and keep going. And you feel alien. You feel broken. You feel like maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with you that you can't just relax and call someone back without your nervous system treating it like a threat. But you're not broken. You're adapted. You adapted to an environment that didn't make space for your particular way of processing the world. You adapted to relationships that required you to perform instead of just be. You adapted to a pace of interaction that outran your internal rhythms, so you found a format that moves at your speed. Texting is your accommodation. It's your accessibility tool. It's how you translate yourself into a language others can receive without you losing yourself in the translation. And that's not something to apologize for. Think about what texting actually gives you beyond just time to edit. It gives you a record. It gives you proof that you said what you meant to say, that you were kind, that you tried. It gives you something to return to when your anxiety tries to convince you later that you said everything wrong. It gives you control over a world that has always felt too chaotic, too fast, too overwhelming to navigate in real time. It gives you the ability to say hard things without watching someone's face change as you say them, to ask for what you need without hearing the disappointment in their voice, to set boundaries without having to endure the immediate pushback, to be honest in ways that would feel impossible face-to-face or voice-to-voice, where your courage might falter in the presence of their reaction. Texting isn't emotional distance. Sometimes, it's the only thing that makes emotional closeness possible. You've sent texts that took hours to write, texts that held your whole heart, your deepest truths, your most vulnerable confessions. You've communicated love and grief and fear and hope through carefully chosen words on a screen. And those communications were no less real than if you'd said them out loud. Maybe they were more real, because you had the space to find the exact right words instead of the approximate ones anxiety would have given you in the moment. You've been there for people through text. You've comforted them, celebrated with them, showed up for them in the medium where you can actually show up fully. And that counts. That matters. That's connection. Even if it doesn't look like what the phone call people think connection should look like. But still, there's a voice inside you that wonders if they're right. If you're missing something. If real intimacy requires the kind of raw, unedited presence that terrifies you. If you're somehow failing at being human because you need this buffer, this protection, this translation layer between your internal world and everyone else's. That voice sounds like every person who ever made you feel difficult. Every person who ever sighed when you texted instead of called back. Every person who ever said, just pick up the phone, like it was easy, like it didn't cost you something they couldn't see. That voice is wrong. There are as many ways to be human as there are humans. There are as many ways to love as there are people trying to love. And your way, careful, considered, translated through text, is valid. It's enough. It's worthy of respect, not correction. The people who love you well will learn your language. They'll understand that when you send them a long, thoughtful text instead of calling, you're not being distant. You're being present in the only way that doesn't compromise your sense of safety. They'll see your texts as the love letters they are, evidence of time spent, care taken, words chosen because you wanted to get it right for them. And the people who can't or won't understand that, the people who keep demanding that you communicate in ways that hurt you, they're asking you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. And you don't owe anyone that. You don't owe anyone access to you in formats that feel like violence to your nervous system. You don't owe anyone spontaneous availability. You don't owe anyone the performance of ease when ease isn't what you feel. You don't owe anyone the pretense that phone calls don't cost you something real. What you owe yourself is the space to exist in ways that don't require you to abandon yourself in order to be acceptable to others. And maybe that means you're someone who texts. Maybe that means you let calls go to voicemail and respond when you're ready. Maybe that means you ask people, kindly but firmly, to respect the medium where you can actually meet them instead of the one where you're just trying to survive the interaction. That's not antisocial. That's not avoidant. That's not even preferential. Really, it's necessary. And necessity isn't something you should have to defend. There's a particular kind of person who will always misunderstand this about you. They're the people who equate spontaneity with authenticity, who believe that if you need time to process before responding, you must be hiding something. They're the people who think real connection happens only in unscripted moments, who romanticize the raw and unfiltered as somehow more true than the considered and intentional. But they're wrong about truth. Truth isn't always spontaneous. Sometimes truth is something you have to dig for, something you have to find the words for, something you have to protect from your own panic long enough to say it clearly. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is wait until you know what you actually mean before you speak. Your texts aren't less true than someone else's phone calls. They're just true in a different register. True in the key you can actually sing in without your voice breaking. And there's something else here, something that deserves to be said plainly. Your preference for texting might also be about protecting others, not just yourself. You know what you're like when you're overwhelmed, when your social battery is dead, when your anxiety is running the show. You know that sometimes the version of yourself that shows up on an unexpected phone call isn't the version you want people to know. You know you can be short, distracted, irritable, absent, not because you don't care, but because you're already at capacity and this call is one thing too many. So you text instead. You text when you have something to give. You text when you can be present. You text because it lets you show people the care you actually feel instead of the exhaustion you're actually experiencing. That's not dishonesty. That's not performance. That's kindness. That's knowing yourself well enough to choose the format where you can be the friend, the partner, the child, the person you actually want to be for them. Some people will call this manipulation. Some people will say you're controlling the narrative, managing their perception of you. But those people have confused authenticity with the absence of boundaries. They think being real means letting people see you at your worst, your most depleted, your most dysregulated. They think love means unlimited access. But you know better. You know that sometimes loving people means waiting until you can love them fully. You know that presence isn't about availability. It's about the quality of attention you can offer when you do show up. And texting lets you show up when you can actually be there, instead of forcing yourself to be there when all you can offer is the shell of yourself going through the motions of connection while feeling nothing but the desperate need for it to be over. There's mercy in that. For them, yes, but mostly for you. You've spent so much of your life overriding your own needs to meet other people's expectations. You've forced yourself into phone calls that left you shaking. You've pushed through social interactions that took days to recover from. You've said yes when you meant no, showed up when you needed to rest, performed enthusiasm you didn't feel because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't. And texting is the one place where you've finally given yourself permission to stop doing that. It's the one format where you can say, "I need time," without explaining why. Where you can protect your energy without justifying it. Where you can be unavailable without being unkind. That's not running away from connection. That's finally learning how to connect in ways that don't destroy you. But here's the hard part. Even as you claim this boundary, even as you insist on your right to communicate in ways that feel safe. There's a part of you that still wonders if you're missing out. If maybe the phone call people have access to something you don't. If maybe there's a kind of intimacy that only exists in real-time exchange, in the mess and the stumbling and the spontaneous laughter that you can't quite capture in a text, no matter how many emojis you use. And maybe there is. Maybe there's something that happens in the rhythm of live conversation that doesn't happen in the careful back and forth of text. Maybe there's a particular kind of knowing that comes from hearing someone's voice break, from the pause before they answer, from the laugh they can't type. But here's what you need to understand. That kind of intimacy isn't better. It's just different. And it's not the only kind. And it's not worth sacrificing your sense of safety to access if safety is what you need more. You're allowed to choose the kind of connection you can actually sustain. You're allowed to prioritize your nervous system over someone else's preference. You're allowed to build intimacy slowly, carefully, through words on a screen instead of through the immediacy that everyone else seems to navigate so easily. And if that means you miss out on certain kinds of spontaneous connection, if that means you're not the person someone calls when they need to talk right now, if that means some relationships never deepen past the level you can maintain through text, that's sad. Yes, that's a loss. But it's not the worst loss. The worst loss would be forcing yourself into forms of connection that make you feel like you're disappearing. You've already spent too much of your life disappearing. You've already spent too much time trying to be digestible, manageable, easy. You've already made yourself small enough to fit into other people's ideas of how communication should work. Texting is where you get to stop doing that. Texting is where you get to exist at your actual size, in your actual rhythm, with your actual needs intact. And anyone who truly loves you will meet you there. They'll learn that your paragraph-long texts are how you think out loud. They'll learn that your delayed responses aren't rejection. They're the time you need to show up as yourself instead of as whoever panic makes you become. They'll learn that when you type, "I miss you," instead of calling to say it, you mean it just as much. Maybe more, because you had to fight past the voice that says you're not allowed to need people in order to admit it. They'll learn your language. And if they won't, if they keep insisting you translate yourself into theirs, then you'll have to decide what matters more, their comfort or your survival. Choose survival. Every time. Choose the format where you can breathe. Choose the medium where your words are yours instead of whatever panic or pressure or people-pleasing produces in the moment. Choose text. Choose space. Choose the buffer that lets you be both honest and intact. Because here's the thing about people who prefer texting over calling. They're not avoiding connection. They're insisting on connection that doesn't cost them their sense of self. They're drawing a line between intimacy and invasion. They're saying, "You can know me, but on terms that let me still know myself when we're done talking." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup, and phone calls drain you in ways that text conversations don't. That's recognizing that your bandwidth is finite and precious and deserves to be allocated according to your needs, not other people's expectations. That's choosing relationships that flex to accommodate your reality instead of forcing yourself to flex until you break. And if the world calls that antisocial, let them. If your family sighs when you text instead of call, let them. If your friends make jokes about how you never pick up the phone, let them. Their misunderstanding doesn't make you wrong. Their preference doesn't make yours invalid. Their ease doesn't mean your difficulty is deficiency. It just means you're different. And different isn't less. You're someone who needs time. Time to process. Time to respond. Time to find the version of your truth that won't hurt you to tell. You're someone who needs control, not over others, but over how much of yourself you give and when and in what format. You're someone who needs the protection of asynchronous communication, where you can step away when it's too much and come back when you have something to offer besides your overwhelm. These aren't flaws. These are requirements. And honoring them isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. It's the difference between connection that nourishes you and connection that hollows you out. So text your heart out. Text your love and your truth and your boundaries and your needs. Text the things you can't say out loud yet. Text until you find the words that fit what you feel. Text because it's the medium where you can be both vulnerable and protected, both present and safe. And know that somewhere, someone else is reading your text and feeling seen, feeling loved, feeling met in the careful attention you paid to every word. They're reading your text and thinking, this person gets it. This person understands that sometimes love is slow and considered and arrives on a screen instead of through a speaker. They're reading your text and feeling grateful that you exist exactly as you are, that you didn't force yourself to call when calling would have cost you too much, that you chose the format where you could actually show up instead of just going through the motions. They're reading your text and they don't wish you were different. They don't wish you were easier or more spontaneous or better at phone calls. They're just glad you're there, in whatever form you can manage. They're just glad you found a way to reach them that doesn't require you to lose yourself in the reaching. That's what matters. That's what's real. Not the medium, not the format, just the fact that you're trying, in the only way you know how, to bridge the gap between your inner world and someone else's. Just the fact that you haven't given up on connection, even though it's hard for you in ways it isn't hard for others. You're still here, still texting, still trying, still finding ways to love people that don't require you to betray yourself. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.